Hi, I'm Alex.
And I'm Calvin.
And welcome to another episode of Hiring Nowadays. This is a show where we discuss everything about what makes hiring nowadays difficult or easier for startups. We will be sharing lots of tips and lots of knowledge that we have on how you can successfully find the right talent in today's hiring spectrum for your company. We are very excited of today's episode because this is actually something we really know a lot about, and it's the art and science of hiring and contracting. What do you got to say, buddy?
That's right. I mean, this is what our company does. This is how we kind of consult with people as well. And I see a lot of issues in the space when I talk to entrepreneurs or companies that try to get into this. And while it's not, you can't just put a bot to this to fix it and hire for it, because while there are tech skills with coders, there's also the mysterious world of the soft skills and emotional understanding and the cultural aspect. And that's why we have a little art and science to it.
Yeah, it's all about, finding a match. I mean, there's a lot of people who have the same skill, but not everyone will be a good match for your company's team. And we are really proud that we go deep on this subject. I mean, we like this a lot because that's what makes a difference. I think, as I mentioned, in this show, we talk a lot about, how was hiring back, I don't know, in the 50s and how hiring has changed now. And back then, I don't think people considered a lot of company culture as a main thing or a main reason why you would hire someone. But it's definitely an art, and there's definitely a science to it, and that's what we're going to discuss in today. So I want to start off with a quote by the famous Steve Jobs. He said, "The secret of my success is that we have gone to exceptional lengths to hire the best people in the world." It's pretty funny because I think Steve Jobs' MO was basically trying, he had to have these people. He couldn't build stuff. He didn't code, but it was the people that could match with his vision of technology, what really allowed them to build amazing products, right? I mean, Apple is pretty legendary at this point. And I think that companies, whatever the service or whatever the product they're trying to build, it's kind of like music, right? You see a band, they probably have good music, but if they look like cool people or good people, you tend to say, okay, that kind of makes sense. Like the Beatles, right? They were perfect for each other. They were a perfect match for it. And I think companies are the same with teams. You may have talented people, but are they really behind what you're trying to build or your company's values? How can you measure this, Calvin? How would you say? What would be your advice to measure a good candidate from? I wouldn't say a bad candidate, but one that has the skills but doesn't match. Mm-hmm. What your company's all about.
Well, I think one of the important aspects of what you're asking, part of it is, do you have people in your company that believe in your company? Or are they just there to get the job done and pick up a paycheck, right? And those are two different aspects of it, and you might have a need for both in your company. That's why maybe how you conduct traditional contractors might be just someone who you need to get a job done, whereas someone that you want as part of your company, you want to have that different aspect of things. So it's really important to distinguish what you want from somebody, and then how you will eventually hire or evaluate that person. So, and when we look at that quote, Steve Jobs hires exceptional people. It's so true, but a caveat to that is the exceptional people, but what composes them to be exceptional? I think the Navy SEALs, how they hire, because Navy SEALs, if you're not familiar, in the military, they're elite. They're one of the most elite divisions of the military. And they don't hire the most talented people. Now, I'm not saying the people that don't become a SEAL aren't talented. They're extremely talented. But what they hire most for is that culture. Do they have the culture of a Navy SEAL, or are they just really, really strong, or are they really athletic? that doesn't make a good Navy SEAL.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about the art and science of hiring for your team or company, understanding what composes your specific culture for your department and company. And I think that can take two different meanings, because while everybody needs to have the culture of the company, you also have to look at the culture of your teams.
Yeah, it's simple. I guess like it makes a lot of sense, especially with the Navy SEALs example, because as a unit, you need to be strong as a unit,
Mm-hmm.
and having that kind of like different mentality can make the team or the perception of what a Navy SEAL team should be fail. And it's a very interesting concept. I mean, it's hard to. I know we're comparing this to military stuff and everything, but you know, this is just how much we love this topic specifically, because hiring should not only be, just an evaluation of skills. You need to go further deep to see how actually someone can get behind what you're doing, and to continue. A way that people improve how they hire or how they can recognize candidates is by making a little something called the product map. So what's a product map? Like how
Mm-hmm.
do you introduce that concept into a company?
Yeah, I hope I don't actually have to introduce it often, and hopefully they just give me their product roadmap if they are interested in hiring. Because what's really important is, as a company, when they come to us, because a lot of companies that come don't know what it really means to hire. They just know that they need people.
Yeah.
If they know how and when they want to launch features, it helps us understand kind of what they need to build, or how many people they need to build that product, or features or additions to it, or
It's
even
like a
testing.
roadmap. Yeah,
Yeah.
of what's gonna happen to know who are the people that you need.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that, right?
Yeah, because as you build the product, you might not need an extra front end developer. Actually, maybe at this point, because your team is already real cohesive, you don't need to add another front end. Maybe you need to add a tester, a QA, or a manual, or automation. Or maybe this new feature, you need to add, instead of hiring a senior developer, you can add an extra, like a mid back end. Or maybe you're at a point in your product that you can actually start hiring juniors. Knowing how the product is developing and what you're going to launch will help us understand, okay, what type of person should we be looking for? And is your team big enough that we can actually start looking at, like, do we need to expand the team into another unit, or just adding like some juniors to your team?
So it's like stepping stones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like of what needs to be accomplished and who are the people that are going to help you get there.
Correct.
So it's like a big map. That's actually pretty clever. Like I would like to discuss furthermore how when you hire, what also comes into play. I mean, when you decide uh, how you choose a candidate, what are the variables that will make it a hire or make it like a not hire? Like
Sure. So, for any developers out there that might be tuning in, really make sure to talk about something you've developed. I don't know a single hiring manager I've talked to that doesn't appreciate the excitement someone has when they talk about a personal project.
yeah.
So that's a big component of this. But how to identify those personal projects and how they relate to what you're currently building. That comes into play with the type of culture that the team has. So remember earlier I said there's the company culture and team culture. Product teams generally have a different culture than the entire company, because product is its own culture into itself. Each team has a specific culture unto themselves. So if we go in and understand what the company's culture, that helps. Like if we know that a company likes to save the earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
okay, we want to make sure that people that come into the company want to save the earth.
Yeah.
But the specific team in hand, they have a more don't bother me attitude. I want to just tell me the task to do, and we want to be done by 5. That's the culture of whatever that team is. We need to know that so that we don't get these people that push the envelope too much and ruin the culture of the team. And however that operates, maybe they want to actually, the team wants to have, they want to have weekly beers on a Friday, whether it's virtual or not. We need to know that, because if we bring someone that doesn't want to do that, it disrupts the team's culture.
Yeah, morale. I mean, it's like having an outsider inside. It's incredible how teams are like microcosms, right? Like it's this whole little quirks and all it, but that's what culture is. Culture moves the work forward because it's the fuel that makes the work fun or gives it a purpose. You know, like working without a purpose, it's like dead. You know, it's like it's not very passionate. But having, I feel like that's what I get from team culture specifically. I mean, how are they gonna engage between each other, and how are they gonna keep making this like fluent and not like being stuck? It's hard. I mean, it's hard finding people that not only have skills but also like can get or that appreciate this, because that's another thing. I mean, if you are a worker trying to find a job and you don't appreciate a workplace like this, it's never going to work out, no matter how good you are, because you're not working for the same purpose as the ones surrounding you in the team.
Correct.
And that's the key component. I mean, you don't want a war inside your organization. You want there to be peaceful and prosperous, and I feel like having this mentality when hiring is what really makes it like successful or something like that.
Correct.
But it's very interesting. I mean, in the time we've worked together, like I've gotten to learn a lot about how you make these decisions, and it's not only in the cultural side, but it's also in, and I don't know if it's the right way to say business side, but how you hire them, like, or as full-time employees or contractors. That's something that has changed also a lot, I feel, when people talk about hiring. It's like there's this very different opportunities that allow you to get people into your team without necessarily having to go through a big process of hiring, like having someone from another country be a full-time employee in your company. Nowadays, you can find candidates easier by having this different type of working relationships, and specifically contractors, right? Contractors, I think, is the name of the game right now, because it's a cool way that companies can access talent from other places in the world. Specifically, we help people hire people in Latin America, developers, and it's incredible to see like the frustration of someone that hasn't been able to find a candidate in like 3 months. Because they are searching for what we were talking about, the culture aspect and everything, and to see them find it in a country that's miles away, like that's really inspiring. And I feel like that mentality is what makes a good hire and makes strong teams, like not closing the doors to this type of I guess like analyzing hiring in this type of methods with culture, with opening the doors to someone that is far away, or even like allowing yourself to look or broaden your talent pool. It's pretty cool. I mean, it really passions me how you find people and it's like, oh man, the guy's great. He's been 3 months in the job. We play poker or whatever. He's like, that's what we like to hear. But it takes effort and you need to think about it. Like,
yeah,
for sure.
I remember right before I set off on the journey to launch Awana, I was testing this out in the market, and I was talking to some founders, and they hired contractors, and they had really bad experiences because when they hired the contractors, then they tried to do everything they could to get the contractors to buy into the company. And I tried to explain that when you're just hiring people without understanding the people, who they are, of course they're not going to have that dedication to whatever you're trying to build. If you work with a firm that just gives you people, but they haven't but you haven't taken the time to understand what makes them unique besides, do they have the technical ability to do what I need? Of course they're going to jump ship at the first opportunity they have. In my experience, when I work with people, I try to do right by everybody that works by me, but at least the people that I bring in, I try to have a good cultural match, or the people that I bring in have a good cultural addition. So even if they can find a better opportunity, they generally will bring it up to me and say, like, we'll have an actual conversation about this rather than them just saying, I'm out. And I see that happen a lot with other companies because they're hiring just for a skill and not a person.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference where we try to introduce this hybrid model between contractor and employee. Because international, we'll have another segment about like misclassifications and the laws governing this. But people are still people. And maybe in the States, contractors are contractors. But when you do this internationally, you have to break down these walls. And most, at least product people, or maybe we can extend this to any people that are working remotely in LATAM, they're usually working for some agency, and then they get hired by a startup. And well, that agency gets hired by a startup, and that person through the agency works for that company, and then they're working from product to product, agency, company to company to company to company. So how can you expect that person to buy into you when they're just actually working for the agency that then is hired by you? I wanted to flip that on its head and say, look, that person within that agency is a person. And if you have the ability and you're at that time in your roadmap in your company where you can actually just hire somebody, that person will join your company and not just be part of it.
Yeah, again, like you said, for those people who just jump for jobs, that's their culture. That's not the culture you're looking for. You're looking for someone who is who's gonna stay with you in the long term and grow with you. I mean, that's what really passions us. It's just like finding that right talent that is gonna allow you to keep your growth moving steadily and strongly, I guess.
Correct.
Thank you for hearing another episode of Hiring Nowadays. Remember, there's a lot of stuff that you can consider when hiring. We love to talk about it. So it's been a pleasure. I'm Alex.
And I'm Calvin.
And we'll see you next time.
Ciao.